Hello everyone, and now we are going to tackle the posterior cranial fossa. Over here in this diagram you can see that the posterior cranial fossa starts at the posterior clinoid process and the dorsum sellae in the midline, and partly formed by the body of the sphenoid and partly formed by the basilar part of the occipital bone. And the major part of the posterior cranial fossa is in fact formed by the occipital bone, and a smaller part is formed by this wedge of the petrous temporal. Now the part of the petrous temporal that is included within the posterior cranial fossa is the posterior surface. Not only that, behind this over here you have the mastoid part of the temporal bone. The inner surface of the mastoid temporal also contributes to the posterior cranial fossa, as well as a part of the squamous part of the temporal bone by the sides. So the posterior cranial fossa is formed mainly by the occipital bone, which also contains the foramen magnum, and it is partly formed by the posterior part of the body of the sphenoid and by the petrous, mastoid and partly squamous part of the temporal bone. Now if we will just look at this in a higher magnification, the things are bound to be somewhat clearer. Over here now you can make out a magnified view of the posterior cranial fossa, and you can see in the midline that it is formed by the dorsum sellae of the sphenoid. Over here you had the sella turcica, the Turkish saddle, and the hypophyseal fossa, which was part of the middle cranial fossa. And now here when you are onto the dorsum sellae and posterior clinoid process, you are in the posterior cranial fossa. And this lower surface behind the dorsum, this is called the clevus, and half of this is formed by the body of the sphenoid, which is also loosely called basisphenoid, and half of this is formed by the basilar part of the occipital bone, which is called the basiocciput. So the basisphenoid and the basiocciput together form the clevus, and this clevus is related to the medulla oblongata and the pons. These are the parts of the brain that come in relation to the clevus, and you can make out that of the occipital bone, this is the squamous part of the occipital bone behind the foramen magnum. This is the basilar part of the occipital bone in front of the foramen magnum, and these are the condylar parts of the occipital bone on the sides of the foramen magnum. And here you can make out the petrous temporal. This is the superior border of the petrous temporal. That means this petrous temporal falls into the middle cranial fossa, and this part of the petrous temporal falls into the posterior cranial fossa. So this is the posterior surface of the petrous temporal. Along with over here you have the mastoid part of the temporal bone, and above you have a little bit of the squamous part of the temporal bone. Now if we look at the foramen magnum, let us tackle the foramen magnum first. It is totally contained within the occipital bone, and it is oval, it is narrow in front, it is broader behind, and to the margins of the foramen magnum you have the attachment of the, in the anterior margin you have the attachment of the anterior atlanto-occipital membrane, and to the posterior margin of the foramen you have the attachment of the posterior atlanto-occipital membrane. So anterior and posterior atlanto-occipital membranes, they are attached to the margins of the foramen magnum, and around the foramen magnum you must also understand that the dura mater covering the inside of the base of the skull, that is the endosteal layer of the dura mater, becomes continuous with the periosteum on the outside of the skull, that is the periosteum of the norma basalis of the skull. Now this foramen magnum, let's remove these things first. What are the structures which pass through the foramen magnum? To understand that, you must also make out that these condylar parts of the occipital bones have the occipital condyle somewhere here. Somewhere here on the lower surface are the occipital condyles, which articulate with the superior articular facets of the atlas below. Not only that, these occipital condyles give attachment to the alar ligaments like this. So you have alar ligaments coming to this condylar process of the occipital bone, and that means since you have the alar ligaments over there, this you must be able to draw the odontoid process of the axis. So you have the odontoid process of the axis and its attached alar ligaments. Not only, you also have the transverse ligament of the axis, or transverse ligament of the atlas, which is holding the axis in position. So the odontoid process of the axis, the tip may be visible and may protrude slightly through the foramen magnum. As the odontoid process axis, you have the alar ligaments attached to the condylar process of the condyles of the occipital bone. Now in this posterior space that you have left, you have the passage of the medulla oblongata. So you must keep in mind that the part of the brain which passes through the foramen magnum is not exactly the spinal cord, it is still the medulla oblongata, because the junction between the medulla oblongata and the spinal cord is at the level of the upper margin of the arch of the atlas. So it is the upper margin of the arch of the atlas where theoretically you have the transition point between the medulla oblongata and the spinal cord, or to be more accurate, from the point of emergence of the first pair of spinal nerves, that is the C1 nerve's immense point. Above that, theoretically we say, is the medulla oblongata, and from that point onwards below is the spinal cord. So just as you have the medulla oblongata passing through the foramen magnum, so also on the sides you can have the tonsils of the cerebellum protruding through the medulla oblongata. So not just the medulla oblongata, but the tonsils of the cerebellum may also protrude through the foramen magnum. Now to the margins of the foramen magnum, you have the attachment of the highest pair of the ligamentum denticulatum. So let us draw the ligamentum denticulatum like this. These are projections of the pia mater, and these pairs of the ligamentum denticulatum give rotational stability to the spinal cord, of which the highest pair is attached to the margin of the foramen magnum. And in front of this first pair of ligamentum denticulatum, you have the location of the vertebral artery, fourth part of the vertebral artery. When it has entered the cranial cavity, it is lying here, and the spinal accessory nerve, which has come out from the spinal cord, it has come up into the foramen magnum, is lying here. So the fourth part of the vertebral artery as well as the spinal accessory nerve, these are also structures which are passing through the medulla oblongata, through the foramen magnum. So these vertebral arteries, they are going to come up and they are going to unite to form the basilar arteries. So the vertebral arteries, they are coming in front like this, and they are joining to form the basilar artery over the clevus. So this is another structure which is related to the clevus, the basilar artery and its branches. So these are roughly the structures which are passing through the foramen magnum. Now when we consider the medulla oblongata passing through the foramen magnum, we also have to say that covered by its meninges, that is pia, arachnoid and dura mater. Not only that, from the vertebral artery you have both the posterior and the anterior spinal arteries. So you have the anterior spinal artery passing down through the foramen magnum. You also have the posterior spinal arteries passing down through the foramen magnum. So the anterior spinal arteries, they unite to form a single one, and you have the posterior spinal arteries, they are also passing down through the foramen magnum. Apart from these structures, there are some other structures which pass up through the foramen magnum. To draw those, you will have to first remove these other structures.